I saw myself present in a world of light. Mountains and deserts were iridescent with lights of all colours. Red, yellow, white, blue. I was experiencing a consuming longing for them. I was as though stricken with madness and snatched out of myself by the violence of the intimate emotion and feeling of the presence. Suddenly, I saw that the black light was invading the entire universe. Heaven and earth and everything that was there had wholly become black light. And behold, I was totally absorbed in this light, losing consciousness. Then I came back to myself. So these are the words of Sheikh Shamsuddin Lahiji, a great 15th, 16th century Shiite Sufi mystic from somewhere near the Caspian Sea. And it's from his commentary, a remarkable commentary, because it includes accounts of his mystical experience. His commentary on a very, very celebrated Sufi work called The Rose Garden of Mystery by a 13th, 14th century master from Azerbaijan named Mahmud Shabistari. And I first encountered this material in around 1984 in Watkins' bookshop in a book called The Man of Light in Iranian Sufism by the great French scholar, even mystic, Henry Corbin. And it was from a section in that book called Black Light in the Rose Garden of Mystery. Black Light in the Rose Garden of Mystery. And I must admit, when I saw that phrase, I was in raptures. Just that phrase sent me into raptures. I had sort of visions of enclosed Persian rose gardens lit with a strange, luminous black glow, if you can imagine such a thing. And Lahiji is commenting on this verse from Mahmud Shabistari's Rose Garden of Mystery. Just a couple of verses from the particular section, on, interestingly enough, on the limitations of thought. Blackness, if you but knew, is the light of the essence. Within the darkness flows the water of life. What can I say about this most subtle secret of a luminous night within a dark day? In this revelation, which is luminous theophany, I have many words, but silence is better. So why to begin with all this Sufi stuff yet again? I am aware that this is all very intensely personal, with these presentations I'm giving. They are to do with, in a way, my sort of innermost intuitions and responses, and I'm aware that it's not to everybody's taste, this kind of thing. Perhaps for some people can even be a little bit off-putting. I do appreciate that, but perhaps in just talking like this, you can make your own translation into your own experience. Perhaps it's to do with being a Padma type. I have a fondness for the particular, and I can't sort of approach these things. Well, that's a bit extreme, but I find it hard to approach these things without going through the particular imagery that I respond to. So it's personal. I've found, ever since I encountered these passages, a deep and abiding fascination with black light, luminous darkness, midnight sun, darkness at noonday. It's why I like this time of year. I actually like it when it's darker. Something actually starts to happen with the dark mornings and the long nights. I know it's it can be a bit of a problem as well, but it does something to my consciousness. I don't quite know why, I don't quite know what happens, but this area opens up for me much more. It's affected, this whole area of black light in the rose garden of mystery has certainly affected my meditation for many, many years. It's somehow related to, the fascination with the black locks of the beloved deity. It's somehow to do with spiritual death and the dissolving perhaps of bhava trishna, the craving for fixed, continued existence. Something to do with these things. Lahiji's experience of the black light consuming the universe is said to be the expression, the sign, the visionary sign, what we might call in Buddhism the nimitta, of a particular spiritual stage or state. The stage when you realise that you are not the source of your existence. You are not the source of your existence. You're utterly contingent and constructed. You have no ownership, no mastery. Nothing is yours, not even yourself. This is, by the way, the real meaning of the word Daravish. Daravish means the poor in spirit, the pauper, the spiritual pauper, the person, the man, the woman who's realised that they are not the source of their existence. They are indigent, metaphysically, existentially. In Buddhist language, it would be the akinchana, the man of naught, the man of nothing. And in an early essay, Bhante says that this is the intellectual and spiritual meaning of the black begging bowl held by the Buddha. He says the black begging bowl doesn't just symbolise, on the ethical level, it symbolises mendicancy, renunciation, going forth. But he says it symbolises, on the intellectual and spiritual plane, the black begging bowl symbolises the transcending of all dualistic concepts and separative movements of the will. Absolute spiritual poverty, complete conceptual nakedness, utter self-deprivation. In a word, shunyata, the voidness itself. Now perhaps the one explanation, a possible explanation, I don't really know why I respond to all this sort of thing, but it might be described as the aesthetics of spiritual death. The aesthetics of spiritual death. I find much analytical discussions of an Atman in Shunyata are leaving me completely cold. But when a man describes worlds being consumed in black light, or he describes his experience as being absorbed within the luminous darkness, and that within that luminous darkness is found the water of life, my response is to gasp with wonder. Somehow I want to go there. I want to go into that darkness. I want to be absorbed and swallowed up into that darkness. I want to drink the water of life. There's also the fact that Shamsuddin Lahiji's experience of black light emerges out of his visions of beautiful countries of different colours, red and yellow and white and blue. It arises out of a consuming longing for the presence, capital Pri, the Hazrat, as it's called. I recall years ago, it was around the time I was into, well, have I ever been out of this stuff? But it was a particularly intense period of being into this stuff, and it was a retreat. It was an early mythic context retreat where we all kind of just did what we wanted, darkly, of course. And I had an intensity of sadhana going on, a lot of intensive mantra recitation. I was also listening, I had a little room of mine, it was when we had the caravans at Padmavajra, so I could be away. So I could listen to lots of Kawali. It's a lot of mantra recitation, a lot of Kawali, a lot of painting, massive paintings with kiddies paint, thankfully all destroyed. And a lot of writing down of, what would laughably call poems, thankfully all destroyed. But this just all added to the intensity of what was going on. And one day, in a particularly ecstatic meditation, mantra recitation and recollection of the beloved deity, there was a kind of ecstatic moment, a kind of swooning with ecstasy. And that resulted in a sort of dying away just for a few seconds of me. And I had a kind of intuition, I wrote it out as a little poem, that I'd got this whole journey wrong. I'd made a big mistake. I'd been thinking you do your shunyata and then the beloved one would appear. Actually, in that moment, the intuition was, it's the other way round. When the beloved one really shows themselves and you really respond, you then die. You die in the ecstasy of that vision. It was if the being reborn came first. Of course, it's not, that was in that moment, it was a very important moment. It's not quite like that either. There's an interdependence between spiritual death and spiritual rebirth going on all the time. Continuous spiritual death, continuous spiritual rebirth. And indeed, in another incredible experience of Shamsuddin Lahiji's extraordinary visionary experience, which I was reading yesterday, he describes this period in his life where he has these intense, overwhelming visions of him. They really don't want to name who it is, some of these Sufis. These dazzling lights, only for them to be completely annihilated in the flames, completely incinerated. And it just goes on like this, even unto, Muhammad Lahiji says, unto madness. Fortunately, he was saved by the Sheikh of the age, rescuing him from this experience. Henry Corbin says that the experience of black light, being completely annihilated in the black light, is a great test for the Sufi adept. Without proper preparation, without a proper context, it can lead to insanity. It's why I think that Lahiji relies on the divine presence, why there is this consuming longing. And of course, his whole practice, his whole spiritual life is happening within a highly articulated culture, a highly articulated Sufi culture of teachers and brothers, presumably sisters as well, within that spiritual endeavour. And of course, this is why in our own tradition, Bhante has emphasised again and again and yet again the importance of the development in our lives of a rich dharmic culture, especially of spiritual friendship. That is the context in which spiritual death and spiritual rebirth happens. So there does need out of, and there will come out of the experience of the luminous darkness, there needs to be a new arising. Red suns arising in the black night, becoming red lotuses, glowing in black skies over dark waters. Perhaps our own beloved teacher, in another favourite piece of his writing of mine, Perhaps he unwittingly, or perhaps wittingly, describes in a poem the aesthetics of spiritual death and spiritual rebirth. We can only admit incomprehension, confess defeat. There is now no seer, no soothsayer, no reader of dreams, no interpreter of oracles to unravel the dark sounds, to pursue through mazes the Merlin voice. And yet now, more than ever before, we understand or perish, learn that language or die. Oh, but what if there was nothing to understand, nothing to learn? What if we had simply to accept incomprehension, accept defeat, accept collapse, disintegration, death, face dissolution of the mind, abdication of reason, erasure of what can be weighed, numbered, measured, sensed, known, face descent into hell without hope of resurrection on the third day? Are we prepared for this? Oh, I would lie down in the dark, in the depths of the sea, with my love. I would drift, red weed in green water, sway to and fro with the clock of the tides. Oh, I would lie down with my love and be at rest.